Welcome back. You can call me the Narrator, and I will be your ghost host for the preceding episode. On this episode, we'll take a listen to some of my favorite urban legends. Now, of course, there's nothing saying that these urban legends aren't real. But those who have come across them have not been able to tell their side of the story. So please, do me a favor. Grab your favorite blanket, hold your loved ones close, and please make sure your doors are locked. Let's begin. Our first story is one that we all grew up with. One of our favorite urban legends. The story of Bloody Mary. She lived deep in the forest in a tiny cottage and sold herbal remedies for a living. Folks living in the town nearby called her Bloody Mary and said she was a witch. None dared cross the old crone for fear that their cows would go dry, their food stores rot away before winter, their children take sick of fever, or any number of terrible things that an angry witch could do to her neighbors. Then, the little girls in the village began to disappear, one by one. No one could find out where they had gone. Grief-stricken families searched the woods and the local buildings and all the houses and barns, but there was no sign of the missing girls. A few brave souls even went to Bloody Mary's home in the woods to see if the witch had taken the girls, but she denied any knowledge of the disappearances. Still, it was noted that her haggard appearance had changed. She looked younger, more attractive. The neighbors were suspicious, but they could find no proof that the witch had taken their young ones. Then came the night when the daughter of the miller rose from her bed and walked outside, following an enchanted sound no one else could hear. The miller's wife had a toothache and was sitting up in the kitchen treating the tooth with an herbal remedy when her daughter left the house. She screamed for her husband and followed the girl out of the door. The miller came running in his nightshirt. Together, they tried to restrain the girl, but she kept breaking away from them and heading out of town. The desperate cries of the miller and his wife woke the neighbors. They came to assist the frantic couple. Suddenly, a sharp-eyed farmer gave a shout and pointed towards a strange light at the edge of the woods. A few townsmen followed him out of the field and saw Bloody Mary standing beside a large oak tree, holding a magic wand that was pointed towards the miller's house. She was glowing with an unearthly light as she set her evil spell upon the miller's daughter. The townsmen grabbed their guns and their pitchforks and ran towards the witch. When she heard the commotion, Bloody Mary broke off her spell and fled back into the woods. The far-sighted farmer had loaded his gun with silver bullets in case the witch ever came after his daughter. Now he took aim and shot at her. The bullet hit Bloody Mary in the hip and she fell to the ground. The angry townsmen leapt upon her and carried her back into the field, where they built a huge bonfire and burned her at the stake. As she burned, Bloody Mary screamed a curse at the villagers, for if anyone mentioned her name aloud before a mirror, she would send her spirit to revenge herself upon them for her terrible death. When she was dead, the villagers went to the house in the wood and found the unmarked graves of the little girls the evil witch had murdered. She had used their blood to make her young again. From that day to this, anyone foolish enough to chant Bloody Mary's name 3 times before a darkened mirror will summon the vengeful spirit of the witch. It is said that she will tear their bodies to pieces and rip their souls from the mutilated bodies. The souls of these unfortunate ones will burn in torment as Bloody Mary once was burned, and they will be trapped forever in the mirror.
Why, hello there. I see you at the other side of the mirror. What are you waiting for? Turn those lights off. Light a candle. Oh, you're too scared. Oh, come on. I'm not real. You want to prove to your friends that you're not a coward, that you're extreme, that you're so savage. Go ahead, taunt me, summon me. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. You have lovely eyeballs.
Our next story is entitled The Lonely Skater. Every town has its urban legend: Bigfoot, Mothman, Dogman, and of course, the occasional ghost story, such is the case for the town of Wintermill. Along the northern border of the town lies the Sherman Lake, or as it's been called lately, the Lonely Skater's Lake. The story begins with a young woman with her hair like golden silk. She was elegant, graceful, and a goddess on the ice. Every winter, when the lake froze over, she was the first to put on her ice skates. Her agility and skill were so great that any onlooker would be stilled into silence. Her movements caught the sunlight just right, sending beams glistening off her golden hair and silk white tights. She was preparing herself for the Winter Olympics and dreamed of that golden medal around her neck, so she practiced and practiced and practiced. Every winter, she was out on the ice and her skills grew even greater. One year, there was a warm winter. Weeks went by without the temperature dropping long enough for the lake to freeze. The woman waited impatiently, ticking down the days till spring and growing desperate as it approached. Finally, on a chilly winter night, the temperature dropped enough for the lake to freeze, and out she went. She didn't often skate at night, but having missed so many days, she was absolutely desperate. She slid and glided along the ice in silver moonlight, danced off her yellow hair and sharpened skates. Unknown to her, she was being watched. From the shores of the lake stood a man, many to think to be a scored lover. He put on his own pair of skates and went out to her. She was so focused on her routine, she didn't notice his approach. She only became aware of his presence when his hands went around her waist. He skated in sync with her, lifting her and twirling her around as they danced on the ice. No one knows what was said, but that she turned him down once again for the last time. He had his hands on her dainty hips, skating behind her. Red flashed before his eyes, and he lifted one foot. And with glistening steel, the man swiped the bottom of his skate against her heels, slashing both of them. The woman cried out. Falling to the icy ground and screaming in pain. Her Achilles tendons were slashed wide open, and blood stained her white skates and tights. From the heat of her pool of blood proved too much for the recently frozen ice, and it melted beneath her. Down, she was sucked into the blackness of the lake, her voice crying out in the large shimmering bubbles. The last thing she saw was the silhouette of the man against the silver moon. Since then, for every winter yet to come, when the lake freezes over, some say you can catch a glimpse of the once talented skater. She glides on the ice as a shimmering white silhouette, the moonbeams still dancing off of her. But where she skates, she leaves a long trail of shimmering red, melting the ice wherever she goes. You can sometimes still hear her screams before she disappears below the ice in a cloud of red and white smoke. We have come to the point in our journey together where I must ask you for a favor. Now, it doesn't take much. Have no fear. If you've enjoyed the tales that we have told today, please do me the honor and follow this podcast, download the episodes, and most importantly, please do share this with a friend. Because after all, scaring is caring. Without anything left to say, let us go to our final tale. Our last story is a friendly reminder that even if you've locked the doors, danger may already be inside, and it is entitled The Babysitter. There was a young girl who was in need of a job and was able to find work as a babysitter for a couple who lived in a large, isolated old house. They were going out to see a movie that night and left the teenage babysitter in charge of their 3 young children. The babysitter put the children to bed when it got late and then went downstairs to watch some television. As she was getting comfortable, she heard the phone ring. When she answered it, all she heard was a heavy breathing, followed by a man's voice asking, "Have you checked the children?" Freaked out, she hung up the phone, trying to convince herself that it was just someone playing a practical joke on her. She then went back to watching television, but about 15 minutes later, the phone rang again. She picked up the receiver and heard hysterical laughter on the other end of the line. Why haven't you checked on the children? The babysitter slammed down the phone. The poor girl was frightened out of her wits and immediately called the police. The operator at the police station told the babysitter that if the man called again, she should try to keep him talking, and that would give the police time to trace the call. A few minutes later, the phone rang again for a third time, and when the babysitter answered it, she heard the heavy breathing again. You should really check on the children. The babysitter listened to him, laughing hysterically for a long time. She hung up the phone again, and almost immediately, it began to ring. This time, it was the operator from the police station who yelled, "Get out of the house right now. The calls are coming from the upstairs phone." Babysitter dropped the phone in shock, and suddenly she heard heavy footsteps walking down the stairs. Without pausing for a second, she ran out of the house as fast as her legs would carry her. Just as she closed the front door behind her, a man's hand slammed against the glass. She screamed and ran out into the street just as a police car was pulling up outside. The police searched the house and found the two children upstairs hiding in a closet, crying uncontrollably. In the parents' bedroom, they found a bloody axe lying on the floor next to the upstairs phone. The back window was wide open and the curtains were blowing in the breeze. There was no sign of the madman who had made the phone calls. He had escaped into the night when the police arrived and managed to interrupt his horrible plan to kill the two children and the poor babysitter. And it seems we have reached the end of our tales. You see, that is all this ghost host has to provide for you for this episode. It takes immense amounts of energy for me to connect to this world, so I must recharge. However, you can help me do such. All you have to do is share this podcast with a friend. Because after all, scaring is caring. But before I go, I'd like to leave you with two things. Firstly, memento mori. And secondly, even if you don't see me, I will see you for our next episode.